All right, I will go ahead and call the Smithville R2 Board of Education meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Kim Davis, would you join us in the pledge this evening?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Before we get started, would like to announce earlier this evening in executive session, the Board of Education approved the purchase of 5 acres of land adjacent to our property here, pending zoning approval. And so as that goes through the process, want to make sure that our patrons and everyone with the district is aware of that, and that will kind of play out and through some of our discussion this evening. With that, the first item on the agenda is 7.1, adoption or modification of the agenda. Any issues to modify? If not, I would accept the motion to adopt the agenda this evening.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, all in favor, please vote. 7-0, motion passes. Item 8.0, approval of consent agenda. On the consent agenda are the regular session minutes for July 20th, the board retreat minutes for July 23rd. Thank you for all who attended. Approval for payments in August, supplemental pay for August, approval of board policy BDDH for public comments, our third and final reading, and board policy DFI 2, setting the tuition and district programs. Any discussion on the consent agenda items? If not, I would entertain a motion to adopt.
So moved.
Motion. We have a motion and a second. No further discussion, please vote. Fantastic. Motion carries 7-0. Excited about several of these. The public comment piece allows us to extend our public comment and allow for more folks to provide public comment when we need to, as well as other means if we have hot topics that we need to provide additional public comment for. With that, item 9.1, comments from the audience. I don't believe we have any public comment this evening. So we'll move on to 9.2, board priorities update.
Okay, in your packet. Okay. As I previously stated last month, our Dr. Cranifield and Mrs. Davis have met with 60 staff members over the course of 6 sessions with a morale survey. They had followed up with those individuals, and now they're working with building administrators to give building specific feedback at that level. And this will be ongoing this school year, and we look forward to that work continuing. And the second board priority update is to exercise fiscal responsibility by setting the course for building reserve balances And after receiving the revised ASBR, or annual school board report, we're very happy to report that it reflects an ending fund balance for funds 10 and 20 of 22.32%. So we're above the threshold that was set by the board. So we're very excited about that. And that concludes my board priority update.
Any discussion on that? If not, thank you to staff and to the board for the diligent work on the fiscal responsibility and ensure that we're able to meet that threshold. All right, we'll move on to item 9.3, Assistant Superintendent for Academic Services.
Well, on the topic of fiscal responsibility, in preparation for summer school next year, Stacy Sapp and I will hit every Target and Walmart in a 10-mile radius and buy crayons, markers, pencils, pens, anything we can for 25 cents each. And it's a little bit of a challenge to see how cheaply can we get all the stuff we need for next year's summer school. So that was one of the items I was going to share with you. We'll hit the road and start getting those supplies. Also on my list, I do have an MSIP update. I've provided a document for you that shows a slight change in the calculation for the MSIP score. Basically, it makes the growth from our MAP scores and the status from our MAP scores equal. Prior to that, they had weighted the status a little bit more. They've made that, so they're identical. That will work to our advantage for a while until we get to where we are hitting the status points more frequently and the growth is harder. But that will be a good thing. And again, I'm excited about the changes that they've implemented in the accreditation process. We will be a part of the first group to provide documentation and go through the interview process for the continuous improvement piece. Originally, I had thought that those scores would not count, but what they're doing is they're banking them until every district has gone through that process. And then in 3 years, those scores will be a part of our accreditation. So, but very encouraged that we have an opportunity to submit our documentation and then provide some commentary about how we do things. There are things, for example, in our strategic plan that probably aren't exactly the way that the state would want them, but we're able to explain how we address those things in other ways and provide documentation related to that. So any questions on MSIP?
What is going to be new targets for MSIP?
Yeah, that they haven't published yet. So we should have the final document as far as like the academic achievement targets and such. We should have that final document by the end of this month. It's still in the comment phase. And so that should be published and available to us. For the last, well, today we welcomed all of our staff back, which was really wonderful. Thanks to those of you who attended a convocation and a luncheon today. Prior to that, our new staff joined us last Thursday. They're an amazing group of people, very excited to be working with them. Unfortunately, this year we were not able to do our Kagan training for our new staff because our trainer got ill and they couldn't find a substitute. And so rather than do that virtually, which I don't think is the best way to learn structures that are all about engagement and keep having people involved and collaborating, we opted to cancel our training for this year, and all of our new staff will join the training next year. So I've already booked those dates, August 7th and 8th, and I've told them not to schedule any vacations because we expect them to be there. So our group of new teachers from this year will join our group of new teachers next year, and they will all learn that together. But it was a wonderful orientation. They are very engaged, really a great group of educators. We're lucky to have them. Lastly, I do have some information on strategic planning. We've had our first planning meeting with our facilitators. And very quickly, they would like to have a meeting with you. And so they are suggesting on September the 8th that we do a virtual meeting in the evening. And then they would like to come for a face-to-face, probably a 2-hour meeting. And we're looking at the date of October 13th right now for that. So I would just like to get some feedback as far as availability goes for those dates. Fair enough. So it would be evening, and maybe, shall we say 6, 7, whatever works best for you guys. They're flexible on that. That would be a virtual meeting. Okay. What is good? October 13th and September 8th. Oh, I'm sorry. They originally had suggested, and so I'll float this by you, the Thursday of homecoming. So I didn't know how you would feel about that, because that tends to be a pretty busy week. But so I believe that's the 29th of September was the original date that he offered up for the second meeting. And I asked if we could choose another. Yeah, that would be fine if that's what works best for you.
During those times, but I can probably figure out one.
On Thursday, so the October 13th or the October 13th, you're out. So let's go back then to September 29th. What does that look like for you all? Good for Scott?
Yeah,
Good for you? Okay, then I'll suggest we do that. Is that all right with you, Denise? Okay. Thank you. I will share that with them, and
Times.
let's go ahead and say 6 to 8. Yes, and let's do the virtual as well. I don't think the virtual will actually be a 2-hour meeting, but let's book it just in case. September 8th and September 29th. Is what we're looking at. Correct. In our homes. That will be face to face, and we should have both of our facilitators here. So David Baldner, who will be our educational consultant, as well as the future IQ facilitators. All right, thank you. Do you have any questions for me related to anything else? Oh, I did put some things at your station. This is just something that I give to the new teachers to help them get acquainted with all the people in our district and a little bit of our history. I had some extras, but I thought you might like them. So that's what that is. And I have nothing else unless you have questions for me. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Item 9.4, Executive Director for Support Services.
Thanks, Mr. Luker.
And have been in the buildings today. Hopefully you noticed how great the conditions of all the buildings are. It's a lot of hard work from our custodial staff, our maintenance crew. They've really worked hard this summer. Scott Bogart has done a great job of organizing those efforts and making sure that we get those areas ready to go for first day of school. So super proud of that. And some of you may have also seen the high school gym floor on social media. A lot of kudos to Mr. Benica, Mr. Mosby, Darren Schaefer, and others that collaborated to bring that design to life. It looks great. It looks fantastic. And so there's more to come with the gym. You're also going to have some new wall pads, some new chairs that have our updated logo. Figured out our logo is not symmetrical, by the way. And so putting it down on the floor, you realize it once you're trying to measure out 3-point lines and trying to get things straightened out. So a lot of effort by a lot of people, but it looks fantastic. And I think it'll be a great space for people to be proud of. Yes, we did. We made it symmetrical. That's for sure. Something to note, out of our control is Highway 92 closure. It is already started and it's going to supposedly run through November 15th, depending on weather and timing of that construction project. So that's going to, interrupt some daily commutes, but it's also going to interrupt some of our bus routes. Some of our bus routes, if they leave the bus barn and go the detour route that it has, even if we did not pick up a kid, it would take that bus 50 minutes to drive from the bus barn out to those areas and back to the school. And so, you add time to stop kids and pick up those bus stops, you're talking an hour and 15 minutes to hour and 20 minutes. We have taken the due diligence to call every single parent that those bus rides affect, to let them know exactly what their bus times are going to be, to give them the option of opting out, continuing to ride, just letting them know the situation. And so once that 92 opens up again, obviously it's going to go back to normal route times. But that just the distance alone there, even if we add extra buses, like I said, it's 50 minutes to take one bus without even picking up kids, just to even drive that distance. So it's unfortunate, but it's something that we're working the best we can with the situation, and keeping our parents informed, which is the most important thing. So just want to let you know, that's that east side of Smithville, where we have our boundaries, there's going to be some long bus times for those kids for the first part of the year, unfortunately. So as far as support staff goes, OPA is fully staffed. Last year, they were not fully staffed at times. So our director was having to go to different buildings and help out when possible. So I think a lot of that is kudos to the board for the contract and who we selected, because their pay rates were higher than the competitors. And so that made a huge difference in OPA being able to fully staff their kitchens, which means we're gonna have better service for our kids. So there's a win-win there. The one area we are still shy on staffing is DNS bus. They're still looking for drivers. Obviously, hopefully everybody saw our advertisement driving in. We put things on social media. Yes, it is DS bus's job to hire those bus drivers, but we're doing everything we can to also try to promote as well without stepping on their toes. And so they have to want our help. At the same time, they're still serving our district. So we feel that we need to do our due diligence as well on that. So the hard part is, it is just very difficult for the number of hours they can work, for the pay they get, and the skills they have to be certified. There's a decent amount of people that say they want to be a bus driver, and they start, and they might fail the physical, they may fail the drug test, they may not be able to pass the actual exam. And so even though we get people starting to go through the training, a lot of times they don't come out on the other end to be able to drive a bus for us. So those are the difficulties we're dealing with. Some of the job postings that we have with bus drivers, but you probably may have seen that citywide. There's other districts that are changing the distances that they transport kids. Right now they're at a mile. They might take that to a mile and a half. We are not changing any of that. We're staying consistent that we will give every kid transportation if they elect so. But just note, when we have reduced drivers, it does take a little bit longer on our routes time. That's going to be what we're end up giving up by continuing to transport every kid for safety reasons. And my recommendation is we still do that. I'd rather make sure every kid's safe and spend about 5 or 10 more minutes on a bus than have kids walking to school where it's not safe right now. So, but I think, later on, we'll talk about more of our plans to rectify that and make sure there is, a way to get our kids to get to school safe with all our sidewalks on our campuses. So, and last but not least, Mrs. Hardwood mentioned a little bit, but our ASBR for FY22 looks very, very promising, and I'm not going to diverge that. I'm going to let Mr. Kruger talk about that in detail in our financial review. So that was my last note I had for executive support services. So any questions if you have any?
The shortage of bus drivers, how many right now?
And when we redistribute students on those, what do those bus routes look like?
The ones to the east that are the outliers are an hour and 15 minutes. The other ones are about 50 minutes. Our longest for the ones that aren't affected by construction. So I'd like to get those down to 35, 40. But right now we're sitting about 50 at the ones that don't have construction at the longest. There's some that are still 30. But 50 is about the longest that ones that aren't affected by construction.
And those are all mapped out minus 2 drivers in.
Correct. Yep. We are planning for the current staffing we have. So if we do get more staffing, then that's going to be just a benefit. And so we're planning worst case scenario right now where we are staffing for bus drivers. We're not assuming we have another one coming on until they're through the program. So we do have one more that's going through the program to get trained. We hope they come out the other side and pass their test, pass drug test. But right now we plan on 13 is what we have right now. So. Tough environment out there for buses.
And we do want to remind parents that the first week of school is always a challenge on our buses, making sure students know where they're going. Our building principals and staff do an awesome job of helping students, calling parents, but it does take a little bit longer that first week. So we ask that, everybody be patient and we'll work together to make sure our kids get home safely.
Yeah, Miss Gilly, who works a lot on our routing, has been working super hard this week. And on Friday, we'll have an email go out to every individual parent that tells them the exact stop and the estimated time that bus will be there. And like Miss Harwood said, that first day of school and week of school is a little different because the first day of school, a lot of people don't ride the bus. Actually, their parents drive them. And then bam, day 2, then everybody takes the bus. And so that first week is a little bit of adjustment, but those times usually within 5 minutes of when the bus stop that they're reported to. So they'll receive that on Friday and they'll have that information ready to go on Tuesday.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Yep, thank
Any additional questions? If not, you set it up well. 10.1, general financial review in the FY 22 preliminary SPR.
Again, any questions for me, I would certainly entertain those questions. So as Ms. Harwood's indicated and Mr. Hedgecourt's indicated, again, we ended the year financially solid. Last year, our reserve ratio increased to 22.32%. And that was an increase from the 18.78%. So your policy DIAA says that the board will maintain fund balance ratios for funds 1 and 2 between 21 and 26%. Well, it's been a few years since we've been there. We all know that. And you all have worked diligently to get us to that point. And last year, we made significant gains. We were at a low of a little over 15%. We got that up to 18%. This year, again, 22.32%. As far as the actual cash in the bank, as far as funds 1 and 2 are concerned, you actually increase your bank balance about $1.2 million. And again, that was needed in order to get you up to that level. So the decisions that you all made last spring to keep class sizes low, to add additional staff, to roll the salary schedule, to add $1,250 to the base, to increase the non-certified pay schedule, to maintain 100% board paid insurance, to add the preschool program and everything else. And all those decisions were great decisions. And we're in a position to handle those decisions that you made last spring. Overall, I included in the review for you some information, kind of broke it out by funds as far as revenue is concerned, and then expenditures are concerned by funds. You've asked for that to be presented in that way before. So, overall, again, the Smithville School District historically has been very conservative on revenue. And we've over exaggerated our expenditures in the budget to make sure we're safe. Well, if you really want to drill down to what that really looks like based on last year's last revision, we underestimated revenue. Our total revenue last year, we estimated to be $36,309,000 in total. Well, we actually received $36,637. And so we missed the mark about 327,000. Again, there's a lot of moving parts, and I feel really comfortable and good telling you that we hit that mark that close. As far as expenditures go, again, because of construction and all funds, we're talking all funds now, including debt service. We estimated a budget of a little over $46.3 million last year is what we estimated in the budget. We actually realized about $44.2 million when it was all said and done. So Wayne, how did you all miss the mark that much? Well, I can tell you, and again, I hope to stress that when we present the budget to you, we keep those budget lines at their budgeted amounts in June. Because, for example, we still don't know what summer school is going to be. All the clubs and tutoring accounts haven't come in. We don't know our final, summer school transportation cost. There's still supplies being ordered. There was still construction going on. So we budgeted those amounts all the way up. We just didn't realize those amounts. So all good news. And again, Robert can expand on this, but in my opinion, this sets the district up in a very, very solid financial position going forward for FY 23. Even with the projected funding cliffs from the relief money, it still sets the district up in a financial position to be very favorable for next year going forward. So I'll answer any questions that you have.
Any questions? and you called it out in the memo, but the COVID recovery funds and, reimbursements on that helped bump that figure up a bit for us, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. For example, on the last round of relief money, we were scheduled to receive $615,358. We actually only expended 425 of that 615. That additional revenue and expenses will be pushed into FY '23 and potentially FY '24, because a lot of that is for learning loss and learning recovery as a result of COVID. And we still have 2 more years to spend those funds. And all of those unspent funds to this point is all for learning loss and tutoring and class size reduction.
Fantastic. So I
Made a big difference.
know we have a lot of teachers and building administrators watching at home. If you have learning loss, and we still have those funds to work and catch up with some of those kiddos. So
Absolutely.
thank you very much. Anything else on 10.1? All right, we'll move on to 10.2, school safety.
I'm excited to announce that on Monday, August 8th, we had 26 stakeholders gathered together to talk about school safety right in this room. It was a very packed house and a nice conversation. We had representatives from our Clay County EMS, our emergency management. We had the Smithville Police Department, Fire Department, Clay County Sheriff's Department. We had members of NRAD, as well as administrators from the school district. And it was that we had a highway patrolman representative, and we also had Kelly with us from the Tribune. So it was a good discussion around our emergency operating plan, and especially communication. So looking at it from the global view of how we communicate in the case of an emergency, whether that be an active shooter event or a tornado or any type of crisis in the school setting. It was a great start to our conversation. We talked about our plan. We talked about ways to improve communication with first responders and law enforcement. Tabletop activities. We'll be conducting a few tabletop activities with our administrative team and the representatives from that stakeholder group. And let's say a bus goes through the front entryway of the PAC and students are in there preparing for an event. What do you do? So various scenarios we'll discuss and talk through. We'll also be working on our emergency drills with our partners as well. We already do that in some instances. Our SRO is always involved, but we may include other partners so they can see how we respond in those situations. We also discussed access to our buildings for law enforcement in the event of an emergency. And so we were able to talk through that. Our next steps will include those tabletop activities, identifying physical needs in the district. For example, we talked about doing some sensors on doors or stop the bleed kits. We already have those, but increasing the quantity. For an example, if there's an event, I hate to even keep saying active shooter, but in that case where if something happens, there's an emergency like that, we have AEDs, but we also have a couple of stop the bleed kits. Well, we might need 20 of those kits. And if, let's say a first responder is parked clear out on commercial, that would be hard for them to get back and forth quickly. So we need to have those accessible. And so increasing those. We talked about how we can refine our communications internally as well as externally and conduct building walkthroughs with those partners so they can get the layout of our buildings and talk through those scenarios. So we'll be scheduling another meeting in September, and I see this an ongoing process throughout this year. Clay County Emergency Management has offered to partner. They work with North Kansas City School District, and they will also work with us to help us refine our plans and make them better. So it was a really great meeting. Any questions from you all?
Is there any one gap that they identified?
Not particular at that meeting. They didn't really identify. It was just more of that outer level of them learning to communicate, like who takes incident command, or again, just getting back in our schools, as personnel changes and knowing the lay of the land. We talked about since Eagle Heights was built and they're, so much farther north, what does that look like as we have new staff members, just communicating that. So not yet. I wouldn't say those gaps have been identified yet, but like doing the building walkthrough and really doing an assessment of our needs, that will help us identify those gaps.
And when's that coming?
We need to set the date sometime in September.
Yeah, that's the piece I'd be interested to see,
Mhm.
because so we can get past a response and preparedness and start
Mhm.
focusing on the preparedness mitigation piece.
So for us, with the start of school right now, we had to kind of
No, I get
work
that.
around that, but we'll get there. Yep, absolutely.
Because I think it segues and it's worth noting, there's clearly a surplus in our budget capability, and I'm still an advocate for putting the correct resources in our school. So,
Absolutely.
if that means I'm also in every school, I think we're crazy for not to take that step.
I'm glad you brought that up because we did talk about that. And so the police department has trainees right now. We have one school resource officer that is provided by the city that we pay for. And we had money in the budget for a second SRO. Well, they just weren't staffed in order to do that yet. But they do have officers in training. They'll be finished with training maybe by December. And if we choose to go ahead and pull that person on then and pay them, we can do that. We did hire our safety and security monitor at the high school to kind of fill that void. So we'll look at, do we want to continue with that position as well as have the second SRO come on? That may be my recommendation. I know we're not making recommendations at this time, but looking at how we can increase that. And then also we could choose to partner with Clay County Sheriff's Department if we chose to. It would be a contracted service with them. It wouldn't be our employee, but we could contract it and then work out a partnership with our city and the county. So those options came up. We just haven't vetted those out yet.
So you're reading my mind. Like, what's the other alternative capabilities to secure that type of
Right.
resource outside of just our local jurisdiction? Why we augment their ability to create that resource, I think makes sense. Now, I'm just one, but
Yeah, that was what I was gonna say. What we do now I'm more than eager to get some more officers.
Now, I do love that you're looking at a holistic approach, though, right? How do we improve communication coordination? How do we work with our LPCs, and
how do we educate our administration on how to become NIMS certified? All that makes great sense. I just think, putting the right resources while we have the opportunity and forecasting our budgets and prioritizing that piece, we have to think about that now.
Yeah.
Because we will come to a point in spring where there's competing priorities on financial constraints. And I don't want us to be in a position where that's not prioritized.
Well, I know that it is one of my priorities. I've given 3 priorities, and that is a huge priority. I do want to do it well and not rush, like you're saying. We don't want to make rush. We want to make sure we're doing the process right. So I appreciate that support of making sure we do things efficiently and effectively as we go through the process. It was a very positive meeting, had a great turnout. In addition to that, Officer Buckeye is Alice trained. I think if we attend that meeting, we talked about not having somebody that was in our district, but he is Alice trained. He will be conducting a training for our staff tomorrow, actually from 11 to 12. And then I also am attending the school safety and MSIP 6 seminar through MSBA tomorrow afternoon. So several things moving on the front of safety. Any other?
One of the things that we talked about before the meeting when we were waiting on the internal meeting was the sign at Eagle Heights still has the old F Highway address. And I would think that would be something that we could get updated for as far as EMS or first responders, that it's the only elementary school on that end of town, but still it doesn't have the correct address on the sign. So.
Okay, we'll check into that.
And you already said, I just want to reiterate a huge thank you to our community partners. I mean, 26 folks came out to participate in this discussion. I think it's the one thing that we see time and time again in our community, that we've got folks who are very knowledgeable, active, and engaged, and very supportive of the district and our activities here. So thank you for all those folks who attended. I know we've got a board who's very engaged and interested in this as well. I'll point out, not a single board member was there, because our job is to make sure that the resources are there, that the job is done, that it's clear line of direction on who's in charge on what. But if an event happens, and in my prior life, I used to work with Mr. Saxton, who did this for a living for hospitals, and the board has a role, which is kind of to not be involved and help on the back end of things, but not to be in the middle of it. I think that's that the attendance list there states that pretty clearly. And I want to thank the board and all the community partners who are active and engaged with this. So as we discuss our priorities on GO bond issues, I know school safety will probably be one of those topics that we discuss.
And I should mention too that we had staff go through first aid training as well as CPR training this week, and there's another opportunity tomorrow afternoon for that as well. So, and Monday. Okay. So moving forward, have a great team in place to continue this work.
Yeah, great work.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. If no other questions, move on to 10.3, April 2023 GO bond issue projects.
Wanted to submit, thank you, Rennie, wanted to submit a revised master plan based on the information that Mr. Bloomker shared with our audience earlier in the meeting about the agreement we have in place with Our Savior for the 5± acres that sits just to the east of Our Savior and adjoins our property near that Horizon Drive. And so you have a document in there that's as the SSD site map master plan. And so within that master plan, it does show that property, and it shows a projected layout of what that transportation facility would look like on that 5 acres. And
Is there a way to share that document?
Randy, you just want me to share my screen? Would that be easiest?
Yeah, that would be.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Can everybody see that in Zoom now? Okay. There we go. Perfect. So this is a map of our campus, and this legend shows each project and where it's located on our master site here. And so you can see project number 1 is the bus transportation and maintenance facility, which would be right here on the 5± acres that we discussed earlier. And you can see the layout and where that drive would adjoin our current Horizon Drive. It would not join at 92 at this time. It would join the drive on campus. And so all of our buses would be housed here with the contractor that's running those transportation services. The second project is the sidewalk improvements project that you can see throughout campus and along Commercial, which would help kids that do want to walk to school that option, and then safely be able to navigate through campus, which now is very difficult for a student if they're coming from Commercial to be able to walk through campus and have a sidewalk all the way down to the middle school or Horizon at that time. The third project is the Horizon Elementary. We were able to do a fraction of what we wanted to do in the 2020 bond. So this is really just unfinished business of finishing up that project and getting all of our units upgraded to where they need to be to make sure that building can function the way it needs to from a heating and cooling standard. And then the fourth project is security enhancement at all buildings. That is loosely defined right now, but some of the things that would be, I believe would be important, would be upgraded camera systems. We need to upgrade all of our doors to where if they're ajar for more than 30 seconds, 45 seconds, a minute, an administrator gets an alert that that door is ajar. We also could have things like Ms. Harwood mentioned, which are bleed kits. So during that safety meeting, that's one thing that EMS mentioned is we need more bleed kits in our schools. 1 or 2 may not be enough, and that can determine lives saved in an event of a catastrophe, no matter what type of situation it was. And so we would continue to vet what those security enhancements would be, and just invoke that same committee to find out from our experts what those need to be. But those are the core projects that I recommend we put in the 2023 bond. Some other items that have been talked a lot about at different meetings, I mentioned there is options. Mainly just because there had been a lot of talk about it. We do have the bonding capacity in the let me bring up another document here. In the second document in that agenda item, this shows the estimated costs of those core projects that I mentioned earlier. And so you can see what each of those projects would estimate to be and what the total of our core projects would be, which would be about 10.8 million. Our bonding capacity currently right now is estimated at 17 million. And so we do have the bonding capacity to do those alternate projects. It doesn't directly relate to the transportation piece, which is why we inserted in 2023. But since it was talked about, I wanted to show the pricing. I wanted you to be able to discuss those projects. And then this item is listed as info action. It does not have to be action at this meeting, but I did want to give the option to be action if the board wanted to move forward in a direction. In the October meeting, that meeting would be, I guess you could say, the final meeting where we would need to have a concrete list of projects in place to be able to successfully promote these projects in April, talk to our community, go out and have the information that we want to be able to successfully run a campaign in April, especially in dealing with our bond council as well to get everything in place. So we don't have to have action tonight on this, but we can if it pleases the board. So I'll be happy to answer any questions or sit quiet and listen to discussion.
And I'd like to insert, like Mr. Hedgeworth said, 2023 would be the transportation. That's why it was inserted in there. And 2025 was actually our next slated bond issue for additional projects. So
Couple thoughts, Robert. Just one for the security piece. When you guys get an assessment, kind of figure out what you want, you
I mean, there's grant opportunities and there's initial programs through one of the medical institutions that I work with that provide stop the bleed kits. We could probably do something there, and it's right in line with what they're doing from a grant perspective. The other thing, you know, the middle school field to turf, that was a huge conversation point with several people that I spoke with a couple months ago. And I think there's merit when you consider what we did with the wrestling rooms and the weight room, adding additional space so it could be better utilized by various groups across the board. I still think there's merit to that and consideration. I would argue with the board that, you know, allowing several different groups and athletic entities to utilize not only the high school field, which is highly competitive, but an alternative place to practice and you know, band and you name it, right? And classroom, yeah. Yeah, that was made very clear to get out and actually get kids out on the fields where sometimes you can't always do that. I think that's really important still. And are you saying we have plenty of capacity in our bonding capacity to include those?
Correct. It would handle that. That is correct. We just got our AB numbers, post BOE numbers from Clinton County and Platte County. We got our pre-BOE from Clay. And so we're very confident in that 17 million number. The number that came back from Smithville was actually 18 million. So I'm being conservative with 17 million, but very, very confident that it can handle 17 million in April of 2023.
So from your lens, when you look at the master plan across the next decade, you know, are there things that you could see rising to priority that would need to probably be thrown as an alternate project, or because we're going to tap into so much of our capacity?
Right.
And you know, the risk is right. Something might pop up and we might not have the lending capacity to go get it.
Sure. The main thing I defer to is our community meeting we had back in February, I believe it was, and the input that they had. And so I think that speaks volumes about what our community said in February. But I think another thing that drives that enrollment, you know, what will enrollment do over the next 3 or 4 years? And so I think that's a big piece to where things land in our cycle. If our enrollment really jumps in the next 3 or 4 years, then, you know, another building site will come to the forefront. If it just slightly increases, then there's other projects, you know, safety, HVAC projects at middle school and things like that I think would rise to the top. But initially I would refer to the community meeting we had in February and which projects, you know, came to the top with our.
And those alternate projects are near the top of consideration.
Correct.
Okay.
Robert, I had a couple of questions.
Sure.
Thank you. First of all, what would be the, it says high school gym seating expansion remodel. What would that mean?
Sure. What that include we'd be knocking out the mezzanines. They would be putting additional structural support under those mezzanines to be able to handle the bleachers that would be on those mezzanine platforms. It would also basically put a wall across the stage, and you would have basically 2 rooms. The first room would be more of a like multi-purpose room that could be used by a lot of different groups. And then the second level would be storage, which is always needed in buildings. They're always needing storage somewhere. And it would also include some sort of remodel of the restrooms just outside This could expand even higher if we wanted to include the foyer area of the high school. And that could go into the main foyer area, and I'm just looking at Tracy. It could include the offices in the high school. It could include the senior hallway. So it could, add. We do have the, bonding capacity for that.
What's the price tag for that?
It all depends on what the vision of that group would bring forward. And so it could be as simple as just a foyer and maybe $100,000, or it could be more of a total overhaul and an extra $1 million, just depending on how deep you went with it. So that could be determined. But I would say if there's an area that, as far as inside a building, there's lots of things outside the building that could be done. Inside a building, our foyer of our high school is probably our most dilapidated areas. Last time, and Maple used to be that building, right? And so with that remodel, it now has probably become the.
So was that included in the master building plan? The additional scope discussed right there?
The high school gym?
No, not the
High
gym,
school.
but the foyer, the hallway.
It's mentioned. It wasn't one of the top projects, but it's mentioned. Now, in our latest community meeting in February, that project definitely rose in stature compared to 2019 meetings that we had. And so, but with the latest community meeting, that was definitely one of the higher projects compared to where it was in 2019.
Yeah, I guess, I defer to your expertise because you were there and I wasn't. With the notion that I am conservative to a degree, meaning that, I still want to safeguard borrowing capacity for the rainy situations that we're unaware of. Because those do happen. Air handlers do fail. Elevators go down, hydraulic pumps stop. Things like that happen. And I don't know what our bandwidth is, how close we are to that capacity. I guess you'll know better.
Sure.
So if you say we have room and you're confident in our current, proposed plan, even with the adjusted change in scope to cover all that, with still giving us flexibility to cover a rainy day, I'm okay. If you say we're running a little tight to that, then I would say, please tell me what is a priority from the administration.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we could do all projects comfortably.
I'll throw it out. Being ultra conservative on the fiscal side. We do continue to hear that growth is coming. And with growth will outgrow what we have now.
And some of what we're gonna have to do is spend money before money comes in if we start seeing growth. So I think we need to protect some of that bonding capacity. Because if we grow to the south, like we're talking about, and this Smithville has this massive explosion of population that people are projecting, we're gonna have to consider land purchases, schools, buildings and all. And it's all gonna affect that bonding capacity, and that's gonna come before revenue starts coming in to support it.
I can confidently say that the original master plan 2020, our bonding capacity is ahead. So we have more right now than we anticipated back in 2020. So strong AV numbers have helped that, but we are ahead of where we thought we would be 3 years ago.
Couple of questions for you. Sorry, I'm probably going to steal one of yours too. The transportation maintenance facility cost, does that include the land purchase price?
It does not.
Okay.
It does not include that.
There's
price.
additional dollars there, right?
Correct. You can pay yourself back through a geo bond. It's your choice. You don't
Okay.
have to, but you can.
The HVAC, are we covering our HVAC needs at that point?
For Horizon, in the 2025 project list was the middle school. So
Okay.
that was one of the major projects for 2025.
That was my question.
Yeah.
Completely new air handlers? Sorry, Jeff.
All new HVAC units with VAV systems, so each room has control of that room instead of one unit controlling 4 rooms.
What's the price tag on those?
About $4 million as well.
But there's value engineering there, right there.
In both buildings, Horizon and middle school, are both value engineered when they were built.
I'm talking about VAV versus zone conditioning, but
In value engineering, the Eagle Heights running okay, everything good there? I know
Eagle
high school, it
Heights-
gets tough because it's such a large building
Yeah.
that it gets,
So Eagle Heights was our first VRF building that we built, and using that technology, it has been disappointing in the reliability of those units. When those units were installed, the installer, from what I'm gathering from the experts that analyze this, basically the pressure system was off. And so we've had compressors go out at a higher rate than it should have. And so we continue to battle that. So the total cost of ownership of Eagle Heights has been higher ongoing than we like, and we don't want units to be out. We don't want people to be uncomfortable, while they're working. But the VRF systems have been much more delicate and much higher demand as far as repairs go than versus just a regular RTU or VAB that we've seen in our district. So
What are we looking at putting in Horizon?
VAB. And our activity center, since Eagle Heights, we have done 0 VRF. So based on that experience.
Then the last comment I had, just trying to make sure I got this right. When Eagle Heights is built, every building got a little bit of a facelift, but the high school, right?
The high school did get the classroom addition. So they did have extra space as far as additional classrooms.
But the entrance wise,
We did change the entrance with the vegetable. So before you could just walk in to the building and not be buzzed in. So that improvement was made in the front. But the main foyer area, we have the old wooden paneling, the old trophy cases and stuff. That area wasn't upgraded.
and then my final comment, and I'll then defer to everyone else, is I really would like to see the security enhancement come forward and understand what those are. I'm supportive of all the projects on here, including the alternate projects, but need to make sure we get the priorities right. And I'm concerned that 300,000 may not be enough for some of the stuff that we're going to probably want to do to make sure that our kids are safe and secure.
Absolutely. And even if you add, for all projects, it's 13.1, if you add $800,000 of land, if you want to pay yourself back, you're 14, you still have 3 million in play for, if you bring security enhancements up to $500,000, you still have definitely some room there. And I'm conservative on that 17. Actually, they came back with a higher number around 18.2. But to be conservative, I didn't want to, push the limits on that. So I came with 17 being the confident number when I talked to Mr. Kinder about that earlier.
And I know that a lot of I'm going to go ahead and address the elephant in the room. A lot of the discussion is that there's all these funds coming in from the data centers that are getting built, and people are now seeing those projects getting underway. To date, we've received $0, right?
That is correct. $0.
What are we projected to receive for this coming fiscal year?
Sure. In FY23, we should see 425,000.
So,
Or sorry, FY24.
FY24. So
This school
FY23.
year is FY23. So then next school year we'll see 425.
So
next school year basically will be the first year we'll see funding.
So we're excited and supportive of those projects, what they could bring, but no dollars. And frankly, that doesn't affect those additional dollars don't help our bonding capacity either. So that creates an issue.
Yeah. So that is could be another discussion, but just, quick overview of that. Any chapter 100 property that we have gives us 0 bonding capacity. With the new Missouri auditor coming in, they're going to look to get a new opinion on that. So it's possible that the data centers that have chapter 100s currently could be revised to give us some extra bonding capacity. That's definitely going to be looked at when that happens. Right now it's Ms. Galloway, and she leaves that office. The new person comes in, they're going to ask for a new opinion on that. Because the last time an opinion was given was when Claire McCaskill was the auditor, and there was only one chapter 100 in the state of Missouri, which was the casinos by St. Louis.
It's also important to note that we were supposed to start receiving pilot payments in 21, and now we're looking at 24. And so that's not promised yet. So we can't count on that. We can't bank on that right now.
I just wanted to say, I know a lot of people have told me that, well, I'm against the turf. I am not against the turf per se, but I am wanting to make sure that we are prioritizing things that are going to help every kid and every staff in our district. And I'm not saying that maybe we don't need it right now. Maybe that is something. I know before that we did say that we were going to do the turf and make it competition. So now we're just going to use it for practices. Does that help us at all? I mean, it helps us for practices, but we were wanting to offload. I think a lot of what was said was so that we could offload some of the problems of scheduling the main stadium. So that won't be able to be done, right?
Right.
Okay.
It could. It won't have the facility for a concession stand. It wouldn't have stands. So people would need to use chairs, like they do at Horizon now when they go. And then there's just small stands there. And then we would have portable restrooms, just like we have for our baseball and softball games now. So we were wanting to improve the situation, but when, discussion came and it sounded like the most important thing was, was PE classes and getting kids on there. And that truly is the turf, not the concessions, not the stands. And so,
And how does that work with like the track won't be finished? So you have a cinder track and you're going to have turf. I've heard that that's going to be maybe hard.
as far as maintenance.
Yeah. And, I guess maybe that's the part that, yeah.
Gotcha. In talking to our architects, I asked the same question and they didn't seem to have
Okay,
any
good.
qualms about
And then I
it.
just had one more.
Sure.
I know I asked you, but I was trying to think of some compromises or something to do. Is there any way to help improve the conditions of the field down by Horizon? Because I know multiple people use it for practices. The teachers said they go out there from Horizon a lot. Is there any way to do some work there that's not 1.2 million that could help?
Yeah, you could definitely scale down the cost and do just some improvements to the field in general with the grass. If we were to put money into a field, my suggestion would be to put money in the middle school field. The reason I say that is Horizon, I don't know if it's a low area or next to the creek or why, but there's always seemed to be some sort of fungus that grows in that grass. And we've had the hardest time getting nice grass to grow there. You'll have grass that's, high quality in some areas, and then all of a sudden you'll have a spot of 10 by 15 that just is bare spot, dead fungus, and it's been very hard. So if we did that, my recommendation would be to put it into the middle school field. If you wanted to go all out, make it a very nice field, you'd need to redo the irrigation and then basically change the grading on that and put sod over the top. That would probably be around 75 to 100,000 to do that. You wouldn't have to do the irrigation, and you could do some grading, but probably over time it would degrade back to where it was over 3 or 4 years. So it wouldn't fix the problem permanently. You would need to redo the irrigation and fix the problem permanently. So
Thank you. That helps. And another thing about turf is I know it's minor, but we do have to replace it. So it's not a cost that just is static. I mean, luckily we don't have to replace it too often, but thank you for just looking into
Sure.
those other options.
yeah,
I appreciate it.
just FYI on the turf on the main field, we replaced that after 12 years last time. The one thing it does do is helps with mowing, striping, watering. When you have that, you don't have to, do all those things. So it helps in labor costs and ongoing costs there. So there's a trade-off with that. So.
For clarification, the turf, if the turf was done as part of this project, it would still be competition ready. Wouldn't be a cheaper version of turf, say that we put on the playgrounds or something of that nature. It would still be a turf, just like the high school turf. They could play games, they could practice on it, they could do everything. There would be 900 high school kids right now. First hour, the band practices for marching band, so none of the high school PE classes can go down to the turf. 900 high school kids, 450 Horizon Elementary kids that have PE every day, as well as 450 to 500 middle school kids that have PE every day. It could rain all night, and as long as it stopped raining by the time first hour happened, they could go out and that could still be used as a classroom all day long. So I see it as being as much an extension of the classroom as anything, with the benefits of being able to schedule additional events. Right now, if the middle school has an event and they're on the turf down at the stadium, there cannot be any other, activities unless they start at 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. At that time, you're limiting your parents' ability to get there to see those competitions. This would allow us to double book, not double book, but schedule multiple events on campus, which in turn eliminates transportation costs. So there are benefits going both ways about actually doing this that I see that gives us more classroom space. Even after that first hour, do you want a group of kindergartners or first graders from Horizon down on the high stadium turf with a group of upper level, doing what they're supposed to be doing? It just would free up a lot more space, I think, that is able to be utilized You know, as long as it's not below freezing and as long as it's not raining or snowing outside.
To answer your question about the quality turf, we would install the same type of quality turf we have on our main athletic field. We just wouldn't have the amenities. There wouldn't be better bleachers there. There wouldn't be any restrooms there besides the portable ones. We'd still be able to schedule contests there to help balance that.
Well, the other thought on that would be basically, if you cut the usage or minimize the usage to say a half or 2/3, you're going to extend the life of the turf down at the stadium by utilizing, additional resources back here.
That would load
So-
balance our use.
And that may, if we've got 20 years scheduled for replacement now, maybe we got more out of it than what it was last time. It was 8 to 9 to 10 years. And we took it to 12 before we changed it out last time. So
Greg, if I'm wrong, Mr. Kruger, but on the main athletic field, I believe you wisely invested in a pad below that turf that was supposed to increase the term of life of that field, up to 15 years, I think.
Correct.
Okay, I thought that was the case. So we're in a good spot. GMAX pad, there you go. So
Jeff, is this the time to throw out spitball ideas on this, or does that need to be done outside this meeting?
This is an info action, open discussion.
Going back to transportation and maintenance facility. What if we were to go a little more grandiose and make that a 2-story building or a little bit larger building and move central office out there and turn this into an early childhood preschool? You've got a playground. It's already somewhat been used for that in the past. It would give us an opportunity to expand that preschool opportunity we have at the community without costing too much money. I don't know what that cost would be, but it's just an idea that I've had, is if we went a little bit larger with the building out there, parking, move central office there, we have a facility here we could use for preschool.
sure, that's definitely an option.
And I think that's why I've been anxious to be able to have this discussion tonight, that, that 5 acres is a game changer, right?
Yeah.
The land addition to our campus, it allows us to talk through things that we haven't been able to even dream of prior to this, so. And that's, my 2 cents on this, for what it's worth, as one of 7 votes, is I'd like to get the additional security enhancement thought. We've got to schedule a work session later to work through some things, and it's probably worth doing a little bit of additional homework and need some additional feedback now that this is public on what do we do? What's it look like? Because, the way the campus is lined out to try to get everything squeezed in now suddenly looks a little bit different. So
One thing to note, this building would always, in my opinion, need to be some part of the technology building. Our internet access from the outside comes into this building. All of our fiber from all the different building stars into this building, and our lease fiber from Eagle Heights and Maple also come into this building. So you could certainly move central office out there. You would still need to house, in my opinion, technology, which would be carved out, which wouldn't allow you for as much room as early childhood, but you still have a lot more room for early childhood. So just something to keep in mind. You could move all those services out to that, but we're talking high dollar to move all that fiber. So
I don't know if you can go back to the map and go down to the bottom. I mean, it looked like, as DLR kind of lined it out, there's a little bit of additional room there, right? That,
yeah, so the plan
whether it's a
initially,
2-story building or something else,
right now, if DLR built Kearney's transportation facility, and so they have 5 bays. And so the initial, to keep the cost down on this building, would to build this out with 2 bays and have expansion for possibly 3 more bays to the west here. And so initially, it would only be built with 2 bays, but then as we grow as a district, we can add additional bays to be able to handle additional buses.
Where's the property line? Can you kind of show us where the property line is?
Sure, the
there?
property line, if you can see, let me try to zoom in here a little bit. There's a little outbuilding right here. I don't know if you can see that, and that is the edge of their asphalt for this parking lot. So the property line is right in here.
Okay. And the retention pond, is you have the I think you should have it now as detention.
Correct.
Looking at the map, and it'd be my assumption that if the road or if we could eliminate the road or bore under that road, we could possibly use the detention pond on the other side and that some of that square footage, and that detention pond might not be necessary.
Based on what civil engineers have come back, they say it is necessary. I would have to ask them about possibly some sort of different structure there that would maybe reduce that. But if we don't want any type of retaining walls, we would need a detention there. So if we put some retaining walls in, it might reduce that. But without doing any retention walls, they would need that pond there.
Yeah, I was just thinking about, since we have all that space over there, the amount of runoff that would be in that area, we could move over to another part on our facility and use that for runoff, and we might have enough volume over there for that piece to.
I can certainly ask them to evaluate it and say, if we wanted to cut that, detention pond in half, what type of retaining wall we need at what height to be able to then reduce that down and just kind of look at that evaluation. So they could definitely take a look at that. I had them plan this with no retaining wall.
Yeah, but it just looking at it, I think we could, with a little bit of civil work, I think all of that could be usable land, and the volume that we need would then go on the other side of that drive.
Sure. They know the runoff restrictions, a
Yeah.
lot better than I do. So
Yeah.
I'm trusting their expertise here with what they have.
I just don't know if that was a thought in their mind when they went through it.
Right. I know I had them design it with no retaining wall. So I'll ask them if any type of retaining wall be needed to reduce that area and have more usable space. So the cost will go up just a little bit, but it would give us a little bit more space possibly.
Mhm.
So I'll ask them to run some numbers.
I think last time I saw figures on this, I think it was around 4.9 million for the transportation facility. So what's the big difference between 4.9 and 6.2?
Sure, they added a lot of soft cost in. So the numbers that I have are very conservative, meaning that they're on the higher end. And that's typically how Jay Dunn in my history with them has always, kind of been on the high side. Another piece to this, let me go
Can they
back to
reduce
that.
those soft costs?
This drive in here would add a little more construction than it would have been if this facility was over here just to the south of Horizon, based on the topography of this area. And so also knowing that this would have a loading dock to take deliveries, some of the work to be able to make this drive work with buses and semis coming in was some of the higher costs of that a little bit, but.
I don't know how many people we actually have joining us, but one of the things that'll probably come out is the cost of this property and the size of it, cost per acre. Would you mind elaborating? And one of the things that'll go is the cost associated with the associated utilities and
Right.
fiber connections and different things like that, and how that adds up over
Sure, great point.
10 to 15 years.
So right now we pay about $6,500 a month for our lease fiber to Eagle Heights. So if we were to purchase property outside of our main campus that didn't adjoin, we would be paying anywhere from $60,000 to $70,000 a year for those services. And so being that this adjoins our property, part of the construction will be to run fiber from Horizon Elementary to this building. So that fiber will be owned by the district. So once it's installed, that's a one-time construction fee and there's no ongoing cost. So over 5 years, that would save $300,000. Being this price tag is $800,000, after 12.5 years, the savings will equal $800,000. So that's why this property was so appealing to us. It's also very appealing because the gas that we save, if our property is 5 miles off campus, our buses have to drive to campus and back to campus every single day. Every bus has 10 more miles. And so saving money on our buses on our lease, fuel, time when we have last minute shuffling going on of maybe something canceled or moved, locations, and we need a bus quickly, it's right there next to campus. And so that is a huge benefit to our students and our activities to be able to have that flexibility of that transportation facility right there.
And to go back to an earlier topic, the school there is a valuable partner to us and us to them when we talk about school safety and other things on working together. And I can't say it enough. I think the acquisition of this land and the things that we can do and in talk about all the other stuff that we want to go do. I
Agreed.
saw some smiles and head nods throughout here as, the possibilities got thrown out. So
Yeah, been working with Bob Papper from our Savior. She's been fantastic. We've been great partners over the years. Horizon is their rendezvous point if they ever have any type of evacuation or need for that. And so they've been a great partner over the years for sure.
very good. So this is info action based on the discussion this evening. Sounds like I'm gathering a sense that maybe we want to gather some additional thoughts, do some additional homework, and add this to the work session that we're going to try to get scheduled. Is that just sense? I'm seeing thumbs up,
Yep.
some head nods. Okay.
I think we're close.
Yeah, I think we're close, and I'm
This wrinkle kind of changed it a little bit. Some
Just-
additional consideration.
just a bit. So thank you for everyone bearing with us who thought we'd have an answer 2 months ago. This
What's our
was
deadline?
I need something by October. Next month, I need something if it's firm, if we really want to be able to do what we need with S&P to get those reviews done, to be able to get it on the board agenda, approve voter language by January, I believe. So that way we can have it on the April ballot. And so I need something permanent by next board meeting.
So the question got asked, well, we know the zoning by then. Around that time, I think is the sense of when we would know the zoning, and there are steps in the process that have to go through, but
Right.
this is relatively straightforward, but around that time, I think we would know.
So, sorry. So do you feel comfortable that you guys could collaborate and put together kind of your best between your master planning and kind of the additional scope and general discussion here, put together a construct of what you would recommend as, hey, this is a direction we want to go before a work session gets together, so we could have a really good spirited conversation around that?
Right. Yeah, if you let me know, are you wanting just April 2023? Are you wanting, all the way through, 2030? I can give you either
No, I
one.
would say, let's focus on this bonding period is what I would say we focus on.
And I would suggest, the original discussion on the middle school turf included stands, press box, right? I'd love to see, hey, we think, maybe not this bond, but maybe next bond, we could get that added in so that it, I think that the discussion was sub-varsity stuff could potentially be moved over there. I'd love to see that on kind of lined out a little bit.
Concept, like.
Well, and that's what I was trying to do here. I have the core and I have the optional projects, and I just want to let you decide as a group, as a board, what you wanted for that April 2023.
So am I hearing 2023 and 2025 from you? Is that what?
That's what I would like to see as one of seven. I'd like to see if, because I would like to be able to see that happen and know that not all that can happen this time, right? We
It
talked about-
can, all the projects on there, we have the bonding capacity. It's I'm leaving it, I'm putting it in your hands, how you guys would like to take action on, so.
We're a conservative enough district, right, that probably adding that all in on this bonding capacity, not leaving us any additional wiggle rooms, probably not gonna fly with this board.
It does not, I can bring it up if you want to show. Yeah.
Oh, these is formally.
But if we added in the additional, the cost of the land, and then if you threw back in the bleachers and the press box and all that, we're tapped.
And you could do the turf in this year, and you could add the bleachers and the restrooms in 25.
And that's what I'm hearing, I believe.
There's,
Yes.
Yes.
there's some
That's-
things there too.
Well, I think mute here. I think it wouldn't hurt to have, we've already got the master building plan out 2030, right? We have advanced certain items. They will fall off the master plan because we will have already completed them in advance. So I think to only look at 23 and 25, when you still have to look, here a few years ago when we did the 10-year master building plan, we're gonna be 3 or 4 years into it, and we're already gonna have knocked off some of the items. So I think for a workshop, it would be good to look at the 2030 projects, because if we're already taking some of these projects off the list, then maybe we need to start looking at projects to replace those out into the 25, 2030 timeframe. Or, you know, if we're looking at our student attendance not, growing the way we thought it was, maybe we're pushing an additional school out to 2035 instead of in the 2030 timeframe. And that changes the whole, the way we look at things and where. So I think, the whole 2023, 2025 and still keep 2030, down the line would be a good idea for that workshop. We've already got the 2030 out there. It's just a lot of shuffling around of projects.
Because to me, important is where do you put these HVACs in? They've got to be done. I hear that from staff and teachers and kids. I mean, they're either freezing, wearing their coats all year long, and that affects learning too. I mean, so we can't just keep saying, well, we did this with Horizon is like, oh, we're going to get it done. We're going to get it done. Well, luckily, hopefully we're able to get it done all at once, but we got the middle school that's really bad too. And then the high schools eventually. So I think looking where some of this can fit into, because those aren't fun things to spend money on, but we got to do it to keep our staff and our kids able to learn too. So just where can we fit that into? I just want to make sure that gets looked at.
Yeah, on the original plan, that was in 2025. And so that's where it sits right now.
It's tough, Robert, taking 7 opinions. Trying to
Yes.
figure out where to go next.
Well, I haven't given mine, but I am excited. This is exciting. This is
Absolutely.
a great time to be a
Absolutely.
warrior. So, you can probably guess I am supportive of these projects, the alternative projects as well. So,
I am also. I do think we need to revamp the security. I think that will come to light as you guys work.
Sure.
But Robert, we're committed to your workshop and we
Absolutely.
will sit in there with you and figure it
Sounds
out.
good.
So
We'll take the
just let
original
us
master
know.
plan, take the information we got from February, know our new bonding capacity numbers and what our current projections are for these construction costs. And we can come up with a plan based on community feedback and our updated construction and bonding capacity numbers.
Well, we're glad there's nothing going on over the course of next week because we're talking about trying to get together as quickly as we can, potentially next week. So,
Sounds good.
so we'll address that date here. But thank you, everyone. It's been said several times. This is very exciting and opens up. And so I want to acknowledge we've got our building principals here as well. So thank you, A, for being here, and B, as you process this news and think through what those priorities are. Please make sure to give us a proper feedback. So anything else on this one? If not, we will follow up with a hearty discussion relatively
Sounds
soon.
good. All right, I'll stop sharing.
All right, next on the agenda, 11.1, the assessment plan for 2022.
I apologize for not providing a memo, but the long and short of it is there are no changes to the assessment plan. It is exactly the same plan as last year, just rolled over. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you would have about it.
You see how easy Dr. Cradfield made that on us?
She did, and I know we have to put it together, but I really like the summary of what it is and when.
I do too. That was very helpful.
And so
And the explanation of what each one was for myself. Yeah.
for our parents and other folks watching, it's a beautiful document walking through what all the assessments are required, who it's required by. And you'll see that most of them aren't simply the district or Board of Education saying do an assessment on this or that. They're required by some other entity.
And a lot of our assessments, like the NWDA, the COGAT, they give us really rich information about our kids' abilities and strategies for helping them achieve to their potential. So really the only standardized assessments that we give that every student takes are the MAP test, which the state requires us to give. And the others, NWA is adaptive. Every student sitting in a classroom could have completely different questions based upon their ability level and how they've responded. So it's good information.
Any additional questions on this? If not, I'd entertain a motion to accept the assessment plan as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much. 11.2 preliminary tax rate hearing information. Everyone's favorite topic.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Bloker. So the information you have in this agenda item talks about our tax hearing, which will be held next month. You might remember in the past, it was held in August in the past. Since Clay County changed to a charter organization, we don't have the numbers from Clay County in time, so we have to do a September tax hearing for that. So the information you see there is the pre and post BOE numbers for Platte, Clinton, and Clay County, which make up our local effort. The Clay County is pre-BOE, they've not finalized yet. So those numbers will probably come in slightly lower than what you see there, because some of the people that have appealed to residential property taxes will probably get some sort of negotiation on that. And so that is the equalization numbers coming in for those counties. On the tax hearing draft, that is the draft that will go out to our newspapers for 2 different showings, I'll call it, or runs in the paper to basically display what information we have from our current tax year and our prior tax year. And so what I wanted to note is the proposed tax levy rate that will be going forward will be 4.8518. At the bottom of that document, you'll note that last year, our tax rate was 4.8404. So it'll tick up just above 1 penny this next tax year compared to last tax year. You might remember the previous tax year in FY21, our tax rate was 5.10. So because of the Hancock Amendment, we had to roll back 25 cents to ensure that the increase in assessed valuation did not change the amount that was funded to the district based on the lower of 5% CPI. And so we had to roll back 25 cents. With the new calculations, based on the increase in AV, we're able to actually raise that by just over a penny. Once we get Clay County's numbers in, that number will probably adjust just slightly, depending on what that is, but we'll get those numbers in before that September meeting, and then we'll be able to adjust. But this is the actual document that will go in the paper. Some of the mandated things that they have in now is the additional revenue from new construction and the additional revenue from reassessment. And you can see those numbers there at the bottom of the document. But overall, you can see that there was a big jump in personal property. Who knew that a car could get a year older and raise in value, right? And so you can see that went from just over 55 million to now over 66 million in personal property. You can also see the increase in real estate as well. So just wanted to show that to the board. This is an info action only. We are not having the tax hearing at this meeting, just to show you what the probable rates are going to be based on the assessed valuation we got from the counties. And then we'll have the actual true tax hearing come up in September. So any questions that I can answer?
Is this pretty close to the revenue that you projected in the June budget?
So we projected about 4% in the June budget. It's actually gonna come in about 6%. So AV was so strong, mainly aided by personal property, because we see all gains from personal property. And so that 11 million increase in personal property was huge as part of that 6% instead of 4%.
So I love these. These are always a quick 101 on how your school is actually financed, right?
Yes.
The property taxes are the primary mechanism by which we are financed. And so, and over the course of the next year, we'll have lots of discussions on how we're financed, and we've got an extremely supportive community supporting the district. But we do have a tax rate lower than most of our neighboring districts, and income from it based on a couple of different factors. So I do enjoy these hearings and the ability to kind of talk through. And if anyone wants to understand how we're financed, any of us here would be more than happy to walk you through it. So.
Absolutely.
All right. Any other questions on 11.2? If not, 11.3, Ms. Davis earlier this evening led us in the Pledge of Allegiance. She's been hard at work. So thank you for those efforts, and please pull out your trumpets and let your good news reign about what a wonderful family we have and how we're staffed.
Absolutely. So like we discussed in executive session, we are fully staffed with our teaching, all of our teachers. So we feel really good about that. But again, I want to give all of the credit to our principals, all of our building leaders. They really put in the work. They got after it, looked for amazing individuals to come to add to our staff. And so all the credit goes to them. We are excited, fully staffed. We have our SPED teachers. That's an amazing accomplishment as well. We may need some instructional assistance down the road based on student need, but right now we feel good about where we're at. So with your approval, this is our personnel report for August. Happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I'll just comment, I was able to attend convocation today and then have lunch with a group of a couple different groups of teachers, and it was tough to tell who was new versus who wasn't new because of the way that they were so pulled into the family. It was great, and it was also pretty clear that that's part of the reason why they chose our district. And so kudos to everyone from the hiring process on down to every single teacher welcoming every single staff member here. So fantastic job.
Thank you. Yeah, convocation is great. All the buildings came with their staff shirts. You saw central office, we had our staff shirts. And so it's really fun to see all the buildings come together, and then the staff members within each building really bond. If any principals would like to make any comments. Yeah.
The ironic thing is that as soon as I explained what they needed to do, your staff said, "Can we get subs?"
And they ended up winning.
Yes. The sad part is I forgot. So when I sat down, I said, "Oh my gosh!" So I said, "John, I don't even know what it is." Like, got it. And then when you said relay, I'm like, "Did she say relay?" So I went back. And then we won. We won. Okay. We got a start.
Back to the personnel report. Any additional questions on the personnel report? Not, I'd entertain a motion to accept the personnel report as presented.
So moved. Second.
We've got a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. All right. Yeah, be vote again. Sorry. All right, motion carries 7-0. I know, it's always fantastic. 11.4, staffing request custodian.
In your packet, you see a request for an additional 1.0 FTE for an additional custodian. We have been short in that area and have the opportunity and the need to add to that department. And so if you have any questions about the proposal, we'll be happy to entertain those.
So you never know it. You look at our buildings, you look at our grounds, and I mean, it looks amazing. And that goes to the hard work and dedication of our maintenance and custodial crew. They really work as a team. Back in 2019, we had an analysis
Done on the square footage of all of our facilities and what needed to be maintained by that crew. And we were noted as being at least 3 FTE short. Since that time, we did add to our facilities. We've kind of covered that with adding 1 FTE, but that still leaves us a minimum of 3 short. Our crew, they don't complain, but we have really been on a skeleton crew for several years now. When a custodian is absent, we pull from our maintenance department to come in and do the cleaning that needs to be done. It's very hard to have a part-time substitute custodian. It's not consistent work and all of that. And so we really rely on our maintenance staff. So it's a trickle down effect. We pull from maintenance and then their work orders don't get filled because they're having to cover for the custodians. Over the last couple of years with COVID, and then we have some extenuating circumstances now with workplace injuries or extended medical leave, that we are currently going to be one custodian short through the month of December. And so already we know if we don't fill that, then we're going to be pulling from our maintenance crew. So what we're asking for is to just close that gap a little bit. We're not asking for 3 FTEs, but 1 FTE to help cover the duration that we have one person out on leave for the next several months. And then certainly they will be able to help fill that gap through the remainder of the year. We put in there cost analysis. On average, it would cost us about $48,000, and that includes benefits because it's a full-time position. We can offset that cost a little bit this year based on not paying the person who's out on leave right now because it's a workers' comp situation. But that'll save us about $16,000, so it'll offset that a little bit. So your cost this year would be about $31,000 to add the 1 FTE in our custodial department.
Thank you for the memo and the detail. Any questions on this? Not, I'd entertain a motion to adopt the staffing request. We have a motion, and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. All right, motion carries 7-0. 11.5, extra duty and supplemental salary.
Yeah, so
In June, you approved the salary schedules effective July 1st. Through working through the process, we noted that there were some things that needed to be updated. Your memo indicates what those updates are. On the extra duty schedule, we've combined our track coach, our head track coach. They will now serve both the boys and the girls program, whereas in years past, we had 2 head track coaches, 1 for the boys program, 1 for the girls. So we've modified that stipend and combined it. So that actually will be a savings for the district. And then for the associate band director, I added that to the schedule when it was approved previously, and I didn't quite get it right. And so we wanted to provide a little more detail and a breakdown of what that particular position does. And so I've removed just the generic associate band director. And if you can see in there, I highlighted in yellow that there are specific details on specifically what the different jobs are that they serve. And that aligns with the way that department is working within the high school. We paid that out of clubs last year, and so actually getting it formalized into the salary structure, that also will be a savings for us in the salary update. And then the final thing is with the supplemental pay schedule. I failed to put in there the change that we needed to do from our DESE grant funds. And so we got the teacher retention grant. Dr. Cradfield worked on that. And so we are able to utilize those funds to increase our buddy and mentor stipends by $100. That's indicated in there. It does have an asterisk next to it so that we will remember that that's paid out of a 3-year grant if we need to revisit that in the future. And then also there was a typo in the football booth worker amount. So I had $55 at $65. They quickly made me aware of that. And then we are able to pay our new teachers coming in this year for all of the training that they're doing with teacher orientation. And so we're able to pay them $100 a day up to 5 days. And that also is through the teacher retention grant. And so we also have started that as well to revisit at a later date. So those are the updates. If you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer those for you.
One question.
Mhm.
Coaches.
Yes, sir.
So you have two head coaches. Now you're gonna have one, the former head coach. Where they go? Are they just now an assistant coach? They drop to that level? How does that work?
No, they left.
Okay,
So we still have assistants for boys and girls, but the way Mr. Schaefer wanted to work the track program was to have one head coach because of the way that they practice and go to their meets and organize everything.
so it's just through attrition.
Yes.
Okay, I didn't catch that through it all.
Any additional questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion to adopt the updated extra duty and supplemental salary schedule.
So moved. Second.
We've got a motion and a second. No further discussion, please vote. Motion carries 7-0. Next item on the agenda is 12.1 miscellaneous.
There are several items that are miscellaneous this week, short and sweet though. Just another reminder that the MSBA Fall Convention is November 3rd through the 5th at the Kansas City Convention Center. So if you haven't signed up and you still wish to go, please see Karen. Convocation reflections. Oh, we have one that wants to go.
You want to go?
Okay.
And I think who all's going?
Yeah, there's something I have to figure out. Karen, I'll get with you tomorrow. Sure.
So we've got a good group of attendants. Great.
Convocation reflections, you heard a few reflections already from today, but we did have an excellent convocation today. It was a nice celebration. The team worked really hard to throw a welcome back party tailgate style for our staff. And we had great staff shirts, as you can kind of see around the room, some great school spirit. We had pom-poms and a relay, and great food, drum line, the Dazzlers and cheer team kicked us off, and just a great day if you were able to attend. It was short and sweet. We had lots of good positive comments. The vendor fair was successful. We were actually able to eat outside because it was a beautiful day. We recognized the Advocate of the Year, who was Maya Rupert, and we also recognized Years of Service as well as the Teachers of the Year and Support Staff of the Year.
Our Distinguished Educator
And our
Award.
Distinguished Educator Award. Do you want to speak to that?
Well, so that is something that's actually been in the works for several years with the foundation. Just, I think COVID kind of created a hiccup there, but something that we've wanted to do for a while to recognize the contributions of staff members. Oh, I'm sorry.
It wouldn't be a meeting if we didn't.
Well, that's true. Good point. To recognize the contribution of staff members who have spent considerable time in our district, or volunteers, board members. I mean, it could be anyone who's associated, who's dedicated time, blood, sweat, and tears, and their expertise to making the district a better place. And so our first recipient was Ray Buckner, who was the principal at Maple Elementary School for 27 years. Several of his staff members attended, and I got to meet them, which was lovely. And his wife came and accepted the plaque on his behalf. But it was really sweet at the end, because I explained that we would have a wall similar to the Alumni Wall of Fame for this, and showed them where. Well, I said it will be out there, and they're like, "Oh, show us." So we walked out. They held my hand. We looked at the wall, and so Wayne helped me identify the vendor to get the plaque that explains what that wall is created, and we will get Mr. Buckner's plaque up there and add that to our pack foyer. But it was really nice. And then Denise even said afterward, we really need to make a concerted effort to invite our retired teachers to convocation every year. It really was lovely to have them. And originally they said, we're going to stay for the award and then we're going to go, but they stayed for the whole thing. So it was really fun.
It truly was a celebration of unity today. Thank you to those of you that were able to come. If you haven't ever been or you weren't able to come, it's a great event to get to. There's nothing like the first, Michelle said it and I stole her phrase because I agree. When you're an educator, there's a lot of days you look forward to, and convocation is a favorite. It's just something about having your family back together and seeing relationships rekindled and the excitement across the district. So it really was a great day. You guys have any highlights that you want to share? Everybody's tired.
You said they're all tired. It's been a long day, right?
Lots of planning, and they are right, and that's not convocation, but you know, it wasn't too many years ago I sat in their chair, and there's a lot of planning that goes into their day, and they're welcome back to staff. So thank you for all you do, and for this team too. You know, central office behind the scenes from every department in the room, you know, has done their share, and everybody kicks in. So there's a lot that goes on to prepare for a school year, and you know, thank you for coming to our vendor fair and supporting, and we're just really excited for a great year ahead. So good day. Next thing, new teacher reception is at 5 p.m. on September 21st prior to the board meeting. So we have, I always forget this number, 32 new teachers that we'll invite to that reception. So we'll have kind of cake and punch and a chance to get to know them better and for them to get to know you. And superintendent search update. You have anything you want to provide?
Yes.
Okay.
Muted. So we, at our board retreat in July, I'm trying to understand, and in July, we kicked off the superintendent search process. That process, we're going to try to get a document out that will kind of walk through this, but it's an extensive process that's going to identify the traits we're looking for in a new superintendent. And so there's going to be a lot of feedback from the community. And so we're kicking that process off with broad community, and then it'll kind of funnel down to our teachers and central office and staff to provide additional feedback and kind of funnel on down into what we're looking. It'll be a nationwide search that will advertise in kind of September, October timeframe. Then move to interviews in the November timeframe with a formal selection in December, and then start for the following school year. So a July 1st contract date for that new superintendent. And we're excited about this process, and there'll be lots of opportunities for feedback from the community and as a whole, and particularly from those of you employed by the district, and excited to get that process going. So I think we're going to try to get a document out that kind of walks through that. I know there are a lot of questions on that. So got one kind of drafted that, you know, Mindy, we can kind of probably get cleaned up and maybe provide as part of our board update that goes out to everyone. And if folks have questions, by all means, feel free to reach out to any of us on the board, and we can kind of help answer questions and make sure that folks are aware of exactly how that process is going. And I think that's it. Anything else from anyone on that topic? Okay.
Okay, the final thing I have under miscellaneous, we need to set a date and a time for a board workshop. We have several things to discuss. As you know, we've talked about board priorities, finalizing those, superintendent evaluation, governance team communication matrix was an activity we worked on at our board retreat, which we'd like to continue working on, and even discussing the hospital TIF project that's coming down the road. So I'll leave that to you guys. Anything else you want me to?
No, and I'm excited about the governance team communication matrix. I think that's one of those things. And I think, you know, the ability to work as a governance team, so the board and cabinet working together on those sensitive, difficult issues that we work through. And I think that's critical in maintaining that trust, and some of the other topics that we have to work through that evening as well. We had kind of thrown out a potential date to get it started. I'm trying to remember what that date was. You remember?
For this meeting?
For the workshop, yeah.
Oh, gosh, I did not write that down. Do that.
Were we looking at next week?
I don't have that written down, so I don't know. Sorry, Jeff, I dropped the ball on that, I guess. I don't remember.
Monday, Wednesdays, or Fridays are typically better than Tuesdays and Thursdays.
I know you've got some dates that are tough too, Benny. Mondays and Tuesdays.
I just did Wednesday is hard for me, but we did talk about Monday. We did speak about Mondays, what we talked
But
about.
Mondays are out, right?
I'm out 24th through 29th.
Okay.
Oh, it's the first day of school.
Is that?
I said that leaves the first day of school. That's what I was saying.
I'll do that.
Mondays are go for help or something.
Yeah, Mondays are,
Not next month. I
No,
can be
it's
here
okay.
by
It's gotta be public.
6:30,
The 22nd,
the 22nd.
the day before school, ooh.
Yeah, that's, you're talking about. the
Maybe
first day of
it's probably
school.
you, harder than me.
Probably for me.
Yeah. What about the following if we do it early in the week? Did you get back then?
I get back to the 29th.
31st,
I
Thir- 30th?
30th? I'll be out again that day.
I'll be gone for the following 11 days after the 31st.
The 30th, is anybody available on the 30th?
Yeah.
that's a no.
Might not be able to do all of
But I can be there at 7 on the 30th. 7 to 7:15.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, you could be.
Sunday, fun day, the 28th.
I'm,
Sunday evening. Yeah. Yeah, I'll go home.
Yeah, no, that's, yeah, I got it.
um,
You said no to the 29th?
I'm not a country.
I transfer back to nights.
You get back on the 29th?
Yeah, my flight nights at 10:50.
Ah,
Yeah.
About the 21st, Sunday evening.
sounds like the 22nd might be the best option.
About 21st, Sunday evening.
but Monday doesn't work, right? The 22nd?
Monday doesn't work.
Not unless it's after 6 p.m.
We do 6 to 8.
Okay, mom here. School.
I know.
Sunday
Coffee's
evening.
at 4.
Not on the first day of school. Jeez.
I guess I do some Sundays, but
What's
Yeah,
that?
no, I don't want to take you somewhere.
so I can do it, but
I'm hearing Sunday, the 21st, just
That works for me.
Sunday, the 21st.
I mean, what did we say about Friday the 26th before the Jamboree? Is that everywhere? Sorry, I'm sorry. Scott.
26 is a game.
Oh, that's actually a game. Sorry, yeah. I have that even written on my calendar in front of me.
What about the 26th before the game?
Scott's out of the country.
We're kind of at a point like least impact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we
What
are-
about the 21st, Sunday evening, this Sunday evening?
I can make that.
I can make it work. It's not desirable, but.
I can do, I mean,
I don't
6,
know.
6 to 8.
6 to 8,
Yeah, that'll work.
6 to 8, Sunday, the 21st. Okay. Same bat room, same bat channel.
Okay.
Okay, so board priorities, superintendent evaluation, will go into executive session for that, governance team matrix, hospital TIF and 2023 bonds. So you got a couple hours to get it figured out. Upward and T.
Well, I was gonna say that the HVAC
You said you wanted quick feedback.
Good, thank you. There's no VRF on this building.
With that, if there's no further business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So.
We have a motion, a second, no further discussion. Please vote. It's up there now. 7-0, we are adjourned again. Thank you, everyone, and congratulations for such a great day and looking forward to a phenomenal school year.
Why are we waiting for 6 o'clock?
Yeah, that's,